I'm Lee Henderson. On a rainy Tuesday in Seattle, I slipped on a slick crosswalk and shattered my wrist. But what truly broke that day was something far less visible, the barrier around a brilliant surgeon's heart. The morning had been typical for the city, gray skies and relentless rain turning the streets into mirrors. I rushed down Pine Street, late as usual, juggling my coffee phone and laptop bag. One careless step sent everything into chaos. My heel slid, time slowed, and I crashed hard onto the curb. The crack in my wrist echoed through my entire body, followed by a surge of pain so sharp it stole my breath. Strangers gathered, voices blurred together, and within minutes I was in an ambulance heading to Harborview Medical Center. The paramedic tried to reassure me, but the throbbing in my arm made it hard to focus on anything except the pain. The emergency room was a blur of bright lights, antiseptic smells, and hurried movement. After x-rays and a long wait, she walked in. Alina Walsh carried herself with a kind of precision that made the entire room feel smaller. She was composed, distant, and undeniably striking, with sharp features and pale gray eyes that seemed to read everything at once. Her voice was calm and clinical as she explained the damage. The fracture was severe, displaced, and required surgery within hours. The word surgery landed heavily, but her certainty left little room for hesitation. She described the procedure in exact detail, her tone steady, practiced, almost detached. Yet something in her gaze lingered, as if she were searching for something beyond the injury. When I admitted I was a graphic designer and needed full use of my hand, her expression softened just enough to feel like a promise. She assured me I would recover. Preparation moved quickly, and before long I was being wheeled into the operating room. Under the harsh lights, she leaned over me, her voice quieter than before, telling me I would be taken care of. It was the first time she used my first name, and it changed something. The anesthetic pulled me under before I could understand what that shift meant. When I woke, the surgery was over and successful. My wrist was immobilized, the pain dulled to something manageable. She was already in another operation, but her presence lingered in the room, in the careful work she had done, in the way the nurse described her hands as magic. The next morning she returned during rounds. She examined my wrist with careful precision, her touch gentle despite the clinical setting. Everything was healing as expected, and I would be discharged that day. The conversation was brief, professional, yet something unspoken passed between us in the silence that followed. As she left, she glanced back once, and that single moment made it clear that something had shifted. Follow-up appointments began simply enough, routine checks on healing and progress. Yet each visit stretched slightly beyond what was necessary. Her demeanor remained controlled, but there were small fractures in it now, subtle tension in her shoulders, pauses that lingered too long, touches that felt less mechanical and more intentional. She scheduled visits closer together than protocol required, creating reasons to see me again. The space between doctor and patient began to blur. Conversations grew quieter, more personal beneath the surface of medical language. She noticed things about me that had nothing to do with my injury, and I found myself watching her just as closely. The connection built in fragments, glances, pauses, the almost smile she rarely allowed. Eventually, the tension became impossible to ignore. In a quiet exam room, with my wrist nearly healed, the truth surfaced. She admitted she didn't understand what was happening, only that something about me had broken through the walls she had carefully maintained for years. The confession shook her more than it did me. Control had always defined her life, and losing it terrified her. Within days, she transferred my case to another surgeon, choosing professionalism over whatever was growing between us. The decision was the right one, but it left an emptiness that felt heavier than the injury ever had. The connection was cut cleanly, replaced by formal messages and clinical distance. Time passed in silence until a message arrived from an unknown number. It was brief, careful, and offered nothing more than a chance to talk. I crossed the street to a small cafe and found her there. No white coat, no walls, just a woman trying to make sense of something she had never planned to feel. She explained everything, her need for boundaries, her fear of losing control, and the way those defenses had failed the moment I entered her life. She had done what was right professionally, but she couldn't pretend the connection hadn't mattered. Away from the hospital, without titles or expectations, the space between us felt different, open and uncertain but real. What followed unfolded slowly and honestly. Conversations replaced silence, laughter replaced tension, and the guarded surgeon revealed a softer, deeply human side. She spoke about her past, her fears, and the life she had built around discipline and distance. I shared my own story, and somewhere between those exchanges, something steady began to take shape. Our first real date felt like stepping into unfamiliar territory for both of us. Without the sterile walls of the hospital, everything was warmer, more vivid. We moved through the evening carefully, aware of the weight of what had brought us there, yet drawn forward by something neither of us wanted to deny. The connection deepened with time. She approached everything with the same intensity she brought to her work, fully present and unapologetically committed. The relationship carried both excitement and complexity, shaped by her demanding career and the boundaries she still navigated within it. There were late nights, interrupted plans, and moments of quiet understanding when her responsibilities called her away. Despite the challenges the foundation held, what began in a moment of pain and vulnerability grew into something neither of us had expected. The distance she once maintained had given way to closeness, and the control she once relied on had been replaced by something far less predictable but far more meaningful. The day I broke my wrist marked the beginning of a story that extended far beyond an injury. It became the moment when two lives, carefully structured and separate, collided and reshaped each other in ways neither of us could have planned. I couldn't just leave it like that, even though part of me wanted to pretend everything was fine. I told her it was okay, but my voice gave me away. She heard the distance in it immediately and called me out. I tried to explain that I wasn't upset, only adjusting to a life that revolved around emergencies and unpredictability. Loving someone whose job meant life or death was new territory for me. She understood more than I expected. She admitted that her past relationship had suffered because of the same demands, not because she loved her job more, but because she hadn't fought hard enough to show her partner she mattered. This time, she didn't want to repeat that mistake. She made it clear that I wasn't second place, that I mattered just as much as her work, even if she couldn't simply switch that part of her life off. I told her I didn't want her to change who she was. Her work saved lives, and that was part of what made her extraordinary. What I needed was reassurance that I had a place in her life too. She held onto my hand tightly, promising to do better, to communicate more, to stop treating delays like personal failures. We found a rhythm again by the end of the night, laughing over dessert as if the tension had never existed. That night, I stayed with her. Her apartment reflected her personality. Clean, organized, controlled, but her bedroom told a different story, softer and more personal. There were books stacked by the bed, warm lighting, and a photograph of the Oregon coast she had taken years ago. It was a place she escaped to when life became too heavy. The contrast between her professional exterior and her private world made me understand her more deeply. We fell asleep together, and for the first time everything felt steady. In the morning she was already up, dressed for work, moving with quiet efficiency. She told me waking up beside me felt like home, and that simple confession stayed with me long after she left for the hospital. Not long after, everything shifted again. I received a call from the hospital's chief of surgery, asking me to come in. The tone was formal, controlled, and unsettling. By the time I arrived, I already sensed something was wrong. The meeting was direct and clinical. They had learned about our relationship and were concerned because she had treated me as a patient. The extra follow-up appointments were being questioned, labeled as unnecessary and inappropriate. What felt personal and human to us was being reframed as a violation of professional boundaries. They launched a formal review, and the consequences could be serious, suspension, or worse. I tried to defend her, explaining that she had done everything right when it mattered, that she had transferred my case and never compromised my care. None of it changed their position. Policy was policy, and they intended to enforce it. When I left that office, anger and fear mixed into something overwhelming. I tried to reach her, but she had already pulled away, shutting down communication to protect me from the fallout. It was exactly what she always did, carry everything alone. Days passed with silence between us. I felt shut out, helpless, until I finally understood that loving her meant refusing to let her face this alone. I wrote her a letter, honest and unfiltered, and left it at her door. Soon after, the decision came. She was suspended for 2 weeks, required to undergo ethics training, and placed under review. It was a heavy blow to someone who had built her life on precision and perfection. When I finally saw her again, she looked exhausted, stripped of the composure she usually carried so effortlessly. She blamed herself, convinced she had ruined everything. I refused to let her believe that. I reminded her of who she was beyond the hospital, the surgeon who had saved lives, the woman who had changed mine. When she admitted how afraid she was of losing both her career and me, I told her I wasn't going anywhere. That was the moment everything became clear. I told her I loved her, not carefully or cautiously, but honestly. She said it back with the same intensity, and for the first time, we stopped fighting the truth of what we were to each other. Instead of letting the situation tear us apart, we chose to step away from it. We left the city and drove to the Oregon coast, the place she had once gone to escape everything. There, surrounded by silence and the sound of the ocean, she finally rested. The tension faded slowly, replaced by clarity. We talked about everything we had avoided. She admitted that pushing me away had been a mistake, that she needed to learn how to face things with someone instead of alone. I saw a different side of her, less guarded, more open, willing to accept support. By the time we returned, she had made a decision. She would stop hiding, stop pretending her personal life didn't exist. She would face the consequences honestly and rebuild from there, with me beside her. Her return to the hospital wasn't easy, but it wasn't as isolating as she feared. Some colleagues supported her quietly, reminding her that one mistake didn't erase years of dedication. She prepared for the final review, determined to tell the truth, no matter the outcome. When the day came, she spoke with honesty and accountability. She admitted where she had crossed a line but stood firm in the truth that she had never compromised patient care. I spoke as well, making it clear that I had never felt anything but respect and professionalism from her. The decision took time, but when it came, it brought relief. The suspension would remain on her record, along with additional oversight, but she would keep her position. Her career would continue, not unscarred but intact. We celebrated not just the outcome, but everything it represented: resilience, honesty, and the choice to face something difficult together instead of apart. Later, by the waterfront as the sun set over the water, she told me how much that first day had changed her, how something in her had shifted the moment she saw me. She admitted that letting herself feel anything had once terrified her more than losing everything else. Now, that fear had changed into something else entirely. She told me I had made her braver, more human, and that she wanted to spend her life building something real with me, even if it meant navigating uncertainty along the way. Then she reached into her pocket and asked me to marry her. I said yes without hesitation. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, I thought back to the day everything began: the rain, the fall, the pain, and the unexpected connection that followed. What started as an accident became something far more meaningful. She had fixed my wrist, but somewhere along the way, we had both found something we didn't even know we were missing.